Hello, I am Chris Hyde, and welcome to another episode of Unvarnished. I'm here with Darren Painter. Darren, how you doing?
Good. Summer's here. You know what that means, Chris?
What does that mean?
Oh, I thought you knew what that meant. No, I guess
No.
not. What it means to me, maybe today, is that we get to talk about real sustainability experiences and solutions with our friends here.
Absolutely. And we're going to let our friends introduce themselves today, which we'll start with Elly.
Chris, my name's Elly Chichester. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer and one of the owners at Allied Printing Company. We're based in Ferndale, Michigan, which is about 20 minutes north of Detroit. And our history is as a commercial offset printer. But over the years, through client requests and such, we've gotten into digital print, direct mail, warehousing, and fulfillment. And now we service brands, global brands, in supporting their marketing communication efforts.
Excellent. Jordan, over to you.
Chris, Darren, thanks for having us today. Elly, great to meet you. I'm Jordan Darrah. I'm the CEO of Print Releaf, and Print Releaf is a D-Scoop partner, and we bring a sustainability solution to the print industry to measure environmental impact across paper consumption in a couple different ways, and then we make it actionable so printers and their customers can reduce their carbon footprint, if not neutralize it, as well as their forest impact. And I think we'll get into some of those details later on.
Rylan.
Perfect. Thank you. So my name's Ryan McVey. I'm the Senior Business Development Manager over here at Print Releaf. Basically what that means is I work with our printer partners. I work with Elly and Allied to understand their clients' needs. You know, what are clients asking of them in terms of sustainability, help cater solutions, and then, help our customers field those questions from their customers and how sustainability really fits into their printed materials, their printed communications, and bringing the best return on investment for their services.
Excellent. All right, Elly, we're going to start with you. We had a conversation a few weeks ago. I wanted to learn a little bit more about Allied, and you talked about how one of your big initiatives is sustainability going forward. And you had mentioned this, which is why we got this together, is one of your first partners in this journey is Print Releaf. But I wanted to start a little bit and ask a little bit about where you, Allied, is in their sustainability journey and where you see it going from here.
Of course. So we are just starting out really on our journey in sustainability. Because of a lot of requests from clients and things going on in the macro environment, we've taken a look at what's important and how do we engineer more environmentally friendly options into our production and our operation. And over the last several years, we've become involved with the partner Print Releaf. And one of the first initiatives that we've really started to market is reforestation and carbon offset through planting programs. And that's where Print Releaf has been an invaluable partner to us into calculating an offset based on tonnage used in a print job. So basically the tonnage that we are using, the paper we're using to produce a job, we are planting to offset the environmental impact of that piece. So it's a really wonderful program that gives a true direct impact on the environment, in addition to all of the other things we're doing, such as using recycled sheets, using environmentally friendly raw materials like inks and such, trying to minimize energy usage, recycling. Those are all things that we do every day. But I really feel we get a good bang for our buck with Print Releaf.
That's awesome. What are your customers and clients asking for on the sustainability front?
It seems that has been something that continues to grow and become more and more important to our customers. We've been asked to participate in a couple of different sustainability audits. We have some clients that are looking for true measurement and real impact as far as net zero carbon emissions, reduction in environmental impact, calculated and measurable reduction. But it kind of runs the board. We have some clients that are looking for, they just want to kind of dip their toe in and have a stack that has some post-consumer waste content, which is something we can easily provide to them. There are other clients that like to really be more proactive and that they are actively participating in our reforestation program. And so they're planting against print and direct mail that they're producing. So it really runs the gamut depending on the type of organization and the size of organization. But what we've seen is it's coming up more and more. It's becoming more and more important to our clients. And it's more important here at Allied than it ever has been.
Now to get to dig a little deeper into the Print Relief, can you tell us, and this is a group thing here, so anybody from Print Relief and Elly chime in here, tell us a little bit about how that relationship has developed and what it looks like from starting out to where you are now.
So I think that Print Relief has been a wonderful partner, and they make the process very simple. We took a crawl, walk, run approach, and we were able to, with a very low barrier, kind of put our toe into the water there. And we were able to just start with a project or two that we wanted to reforest against. And it's a simple process, going onto a website, calculating a page offset based on paper tonnage that we're using, and then allocating for that planting against a job. What we are looking at is expanding that relationship and doing a true, based on a broader impact of our customer base, doing a reforestation and or carbon offset at our level. So not just creating it as an opt-in program for our customers, but something that Allied is actively participating in.
I want to say congratulations for doing that, Elly, for taking those steps. Yeah, it seems like your company has always been progressing. It's not surprising that you're also doing things around sustainability. So congratulations to your team. I think that is noticeable, and I think that's the way that the market perceives your company too. Sort of wondering what those initial discussions with Rylan might have been like. So I imagine, Rylan, you can chime in too. You have to educate on probably all the time for printers to know what to track, to sort of set up the dashboard. Can you talk about the relationship that you guys have and your coordination and communication?
Yes, I can go on there. So when we initially did discovery towards a partnership with Ally, Elly came to us with kind of the idea to reforest based on direct mailers, and we informed her on how we measure paper consumption, where it's not really on a mailer by mailer basis, but we're looking at the total impact of the print job as a whole. And that was really, what's the best way to say? That was really a different approach to what Allied was looking for. But as Elly kind of mentioned, that she really found the simplicity and the accountability of our platform as a differentiator. And that's something that we see with a lot of our partners, is they want accountability behind the reforestation. They like the simplicity of our dashboard. And then from an operational standpoint, just making it easy to work with the partners is a big check mark that we have to go through. So those initial conversations were a lot of, okay, how can Print Relief work with your base of operations? How can this message of reforesting based on paper consumption, how can that be perceived to your customers? How can salespeople talk about it? How can it be marketed correctly to your customer base? And so we kind of started that relationship initially, and then Elly came to us, a couple of just recently from D-Scoop saying a lot of her customers are asking about these sustainability questions. And so we've been working with her to, ultimately answer that so she can bring value to her customer base.
Elly, I have a question for you. There's a difference, isn't there, in sort of just hoping or wanting to be quote unquote sustainable. Obviously, no one wants to be anti-sustainable, right? Like the idea that's a sort of a universal positive thing and a necessary thing now, and seeing a dashboard that sort of crystallizes the impact and the idea behind that thought. Can you talk about the difference between those two? Like, have you progressed perhaps maybe from a goal to things now that you didn't before?
Okay, so since we first, if you look at kind of just our initial starting point was engaging with a partner like Print Relief. Some of the other things that we've done are engage with other core partners. And so we've looked for partners that are like-minded, that are focusing on sustainability efforts, that are certainly they can attest to how they are handling materials. So there's a chain of custody that we're comfortable with, that's environmentally friendly. But I think one of the most important initiatives that we started was an internal green team. And what we did was we put out messaging internally to our employees, to the entire employee base, that we wanted to start this initiative and we were going to have an introductory meeting. And we did that a few weeks ago. And we've got about 95 employees. And I was amazed when we had 30 employees show up for this meeting that were all interested. They were doing it just, out of their interest and passion. They sat in on this discussion. We went through as a company areas that we had devised as focus points. We presented those to this group of employees. And then we asked them to make some suggestions, provide some feedback. Since we started that, we launched an internal microsite that our employees can access, and we're posting information there. We've got a shared sheet that is a feedback log that employees can input their suggestions. We can assign it to somebody and make it actionable. We can report back on where that stands. We've got our next meeting scheduled where we'll look at some of the bigger impact items. But what we found is even in that first meeting where people, when they participated, they didn't know what they were getting into. But they still came prepared with suggestions for, what if we did this and what if we did this? And some of the suggestions were really, really very low bar. For instance, we still use, we do have single-use plastic that we provide to clients when they're on site. We've looked at moving away from the plastic bottles and having a different vehicle to provide refreshments to clients so that it's less impactful, it's negatively impactful to the environment. So there were some very, very easy to implement suggestions that we've already taken into account and executed on. And then there are some that are a little bit longer standing. Recycling of electronic waste was one that came up. So I think it's going to be a really wonderful thing, and we've already started to feel the impact of some of that positive energy within our employee base.
It's amazing. I'm going to step back to the one question before that, which was you were talking about the investment that you are making in this, that you're going to make this investment because it's the right thing to do. Is that hard sometimes to defend? Being that you are a for-profit business, is how does it keep? How do you keep that momentum going when you have to? It's an investment, and there is really not a return that you can say, oh, we're going to get a return on this. Obviously, in marketing, you could make a play for that, but how do you defend something like this when it's really it's more of a passion investment than anything?
It's not always easy to do. With a company like ours, we're justifying every investment. But when we look at this isn't just a marketing initiative. it certainly is something that I think generates goodwill in the marketplace and with customers. But for some of our customers, this is as critical as having equipment on the floor. It's as critical as having, SOC 2 certification, as having ISO certification. So it's a critical initiative. So it's something that gives us a seat at a table when we're talking to a prospect or a client and we're looking to increase in engagement. When I look at our customer base, most of the global brands that we deal with have some type of sustainability requirement. And so I think the justification is pretty straightforward. If we want to participate with some of these brands, this is a requirement, and it's important. I'm glad it's something that there are others that are so focused on.
And Jordan, you see this across a lot of your customers and clients. How are they leveraging what you provide as a value to customers?
That could be a really long answer because it varies from partner to partner. We have over 500 of them now, and we work across different segments of print and packaging. So we work in office print, commercial print, like with Allied packaging now. And so it's leveraged in different ways. But I'd say if I was just to try and figure out the common ground, Elly kind of touched on this as to where I think maybe they're headed next. Most commonly, if I'm a printer and I look at my most valued clients, let's just call it your top 10, they often consider investing in Print Releaf for those clients to bring a value-added service to them. And, if you just look at it objectively and forget the environmental benefit or the marketing benefit, it's a business investment. They're taking Print Releaf and they're investing in us to provide value to their client that checks a box for sustainability, environmental compliance, and then it unlocks some other marketing features and tools that they like. For example, we give each end customer a QR code they can put on the print job themselves, which when scanned, it tells a whole sustainability story. Well, that's value being delivered by Allied to their client. It's helping their customer tell a story to their audience about their brand. And so threading that needle and giving them something that's valuable in the realm of sustainability is how it's leveraged. Where you break outside, say, that top 10 accounts, often printers are going to be more strategic or selective about how they leverage it. They may charge customers. It depends on what services are opted into with us, whether it's reforestation or carbon. And then it matters what those customers' goals are. As Elly touched on, each customer is at a different stage in their journey. You might have smaller to medium-sized customers who are just waking up and starting their sustainability journey. Then you have like Fortune 100 clients where they've got public-facing commitments and pledges for being net zero for as aggressive as 2030 or 2040. And they have a long list of requirements for their suppliers, and it could be their printers in terms of what they need for measuring their carbon footprint, for offsetting it, reducing it. And so we try to be really flexible so that each printer we work with can leverage our services the way that is best for them. And so we try to meet them where they're at on that journey, in sync with where their clients are at in that journey. Every profile is a little bit different. So it's tough to answer, Chris, but I think we're just trying to kind of drive the bus here at different speeds to make sure we're helping everybody add value along the way.
It shouldn't go without saying that the bus, in your metaphor, though, is a really smart business idea. Like this idea of a sustainability software, that automates environmental the things that can be tracked is a really cool company. It's not a surprise that you guys now have that many clients. Congrats for growing to this point.
Thanks. Yeah, it's been a journey.
Yeah, right.
Ourselves, but we've hit some momentum here the last few years, really since COVID, because we were just in the office print market. We kind of found the commercial print market right after that, and it's kind of taken off because our model is really based on the volume of paper consumption that we're measuring. And so I come from the office print market, and so I had to get up and down the learning curve in commercial print, and it was kind of awesome to realize that there's a lot more paper consumption flowing through the commercial print segment therefore there's a lot more opportunity for impact and for growth for our companies. So it's all sort of come together that way.
That makes sense. Yeah. And you come at this too from what I remember from like a kind of a statistics or techie mindset. You have a brain that can do that really well. I wonder if has it been interesting to talk to printers about what they need to gather, the statistics they need to gather, the metrics they need to follow. And Elly, I'm kind of wondering what your take is on this too, because I do think maybe that holds some companies back. It might be too complicated, it might be too complex to get into certain aspects of this, versus what Elly is seeing now, which is a dashboard of trees growing and all of this now impacting her flow. Long way of saying it, but like, is it as complicated as a lot of people assume it is? And I want you both to answer that. And Ryland, feel free to jump in too.
I think a couple of things to react to there. There's sustainability for your company itself, so Allied's own carbon footprint as its own corporation. Then there's sustainability for your customers, and our services roll out on the latter. We're looking to measure the paper consumption with these print jobs, and then offset the forest impact of the carbon footprint. And with the data side of it, Darren, you're just touching on. There's kind of a full spectrum here. So you can put the data in for one print job, and it'll tell you exactly how many trees need to be planted to offset, or how many carbon offsets need to be purchased to offset the emissions. Or you can do all of your print jobs for a given month. So we have some really large printers that pass us a file literally at the end of the month that has like 10,000 rows on it. And all the data on those rows is all the paper specs, so different stocks, weights, quantities. And we have created some really cool technology where we actually created our own file format, and it's a Print Releaf file format. So we bring in all these different types of spreadsheets. Really, we can unify it into one file format, then process it into our own system. We created this system called a mesh system, which takes this data, unifies it from all these different MIS systems. You can think of it as a funnel coming in. It's unified, and then it goes into Print Releaf, so it's really clean, can be mapped to all the different accounts, and then we basically push the button to run the workflows to offset and plant the trees, or offset the carbon for those jobs. And so it allows us to sort of automate and scale. So when we meet with any particular printer, we first need to go through discovery to figure out how they want to work with us. So if they want to start at, just sort of a bottoms up approach and just get, dip their toe in the water, we're going to do one print job with you this month. Next time, we're going to do 10 print jobs. And then eventually they might transition over where they're doing all of their print jobs. And so we've got the tech and the interface to kind of work with them, again, depending on where they're at in that journey and how they want to pass the data to us. But you're right, it is a question that comes up inherently with each engagement, and it just is dependent on, how much volume they really want to pass through.
That makes sense.
I'm going off the rails here. I'm going off the I'm going off the rails here, Jordan. I'm looking at you squarely here. You're talking about all these like spreadsheet algorithm. No, I don't know if you have the right word is algorithms or not. Okay, so you're calculating against the paper. So the paper tonnage. What else is there? Anything other than just the paper tonnage that gets factored into that as far as emissions go? So are you again? I told you I'm going off the rails here. As though it showed up magically at Allied's doorstep, or does it take into account, because you're actually taking into account like, oh, that's let's say Nakusa, and we know that it's made in a plant or there, and it's getting transported to Elly shop using this much transport. Like, how deep is that going, your calculations? The trees were harvested from Canada, driven to the mill to Allied. Yep. Is that kind of calculation going into this?
No, excellent question. And not to get too nerdy, but really answer the question is, so again, there's two services. The first one is the reforestation. So we're measuring forest impact. We use a measuring stick from the Environmental Paper Network that 83 pounds of paper equals one standard tree. And a standard tree, you can think of it as a unit of biomass. It's a 40-foot tall tree by 7 inches wide at the trunk. So in that particular service, we're not calculating the harvesting of the wood, the transport of the logs, and the carbon emissions associated with that. It's literally the weighted paper against the biomass that's been harvested. And so it's that simple on the surface. It's more sophisticated underneath it, because when you take these paper stocks and they're all different weights and sizes, we have to normalize that down to how many pounds or kilograms it is before we equate it to a tree and then go plant the trees. And when we go plant the trees, we're doing a similar consideration where we have to account for the species, the size of that tree, the survival rate, because one of the Print Releaf promises is whatever losses we have when we plant the trees, we replant them. That's the whole integrity of the system. So all of that has to balance in terms of how we measure paper and then plant trees. But on the carbon side, you touched on this. We use a calculation from the American Forest and Paper Association that just about 1,171 pounds of paper results in 1 metric ton of carbon being emitted into the atmosphere. And that's a comprehensive calculation that starts with the harvesting of the trees, the electricity that goes into cutting them down, then transporting them to the mill. And then the most significant part of that carbon footprint is the energy intensity at the mill. So all of the power to convert that from wood into pulp into paper. And then you've got the delivery, you've got the end of life and recycling. And then there's this other factor called global warming potential, which is the disturbance of the forest. All of those factors go into the AF&PA calculation. Inherently, it could be a little bit gray or brown or green, depending on how much green or brown power is being fed into the grid. But you have to have a standard, and that's the one that we're locking into as a calculation. And then we use that to determine how many metric tons of carbon need to be offset if that's the service that the customer's opting into.
I have to think you have a gem in Rylan to help get that message out, because that's not an easy message to get out. And I know, Rylan, you have a background in environmental, all kinds of environmental stuff. And it feels like your Venn diagram maybe in the middle is not only that, but this passion for what you're doing, right? I remember your LinkedIn page. I think there's a quote that says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant it is now. What has your experience been like helping to do exactly what Jordan just said?
Yeah, sustainability has been an evolving conversation for many years, and luckily I've been in the sustainability realm for quite some time. Just straight out of college, I worked with government agencies in terms of tracking deforestation. I've worked with environmental consulting in the past before my time at Print Releaf, and then working with Print Releaf, working in the print sector, we've really seen the conversation of sustainability evolve to where sustainability was a nice to have to now we're kind of rounding that corner. As Elly was mentioning, with clients, some clients waking up on the sustainability conversation to some even pushing and regulating what specific sustainability requirements there are. So that conversation has evolved over the past couple of years. And, quite frankly, it is a little bit of a learning curve to get up and down that sustainability conversation. But as it's constantly evolving, and Jordan and Elly can attest to this too, is just being aware of what clients are specifically asking about, taking that feedback and kind of digesting that and looking at the overall market, we can kind of see a trend of sustainability. And really, it's my task to be on top of that conversation. How does Print Releaf fit into these evolving sustainability conversations? And how can I guide our partners like Allied to give the best information to their customers who are ultimately looking to answer these evolving and tough questions?
That's awesome. Thanks, Rylan.
All right, I guess I have one last question for Elly and all of you. Really, it's just, what do you see as like how you go? Where do you go from here? Like, what are your plans? And looking at this sort of like a portfolio of sustainability efforts, because I see that Print Releaf can handle certain parts of it. Like, what do you see in holistically how you're developing your sustainability initiative?
We've engaged in the last couple weeks with various stakeholders locally and at the county level to understand what kind of support there is for a company that is looking to, start to measure and then set goals for, reducing their carbon footprint, reducing greenhouse gas emissions and such. We reached out to some of the auditors that were putting out these sustainability questionnaires and got some good information. We are working with the Sustainable Green Partnership. We're having an introductory conversation with them to understand how we can become involved there so that we can really move this along. When we first started out, we kind of didn't know what we didn't know. And I think we've learned a lot over the last several months, and that'll only grow. But what I love is that as an owner of this company, this initiative is held at the highest level, and I'm not the only owner partner that is involved in this. So all four of us were at the table. Our sales team is engaged. We've got representatives from every department of the company. So where do we take it from here? I think what we'll look at doing is just continuing to implement as we can and to try to grab some of the small wins and move those forward and know that they'll add up and they'll accumulate exponentially. So forward is a pace, and that's kind of how we're looking at it. And as long as we're moving the ball forward, I think we're going to celebrate that.
Jordan, how about you? Like, what do you see? What are you seeing for trends, and what are you excited about?
Trends, I see it moving more from a voluntary to a regulated industry. And we're seeing that because we do work across the world. We do a lot of business in Europe, business in Canada. And if you look at those markets and those countries within those markets, they have different regulations that are emerging for, just to keep it simple, measuring carbon, reducing carbon, offsetting carbon. And so we're one small piece of a much bigger puzzle. If I'm a company and I'm looking at my carbon footprint, we're a fraction of that whole footprint. So we're just trying to help within that realm of print, and specifically the paper, which is like a significant part of it flowing through. But we're just on this continuum. And when we talk to customers in Europe, it tends to be a little bit more progressive, or a requirement in their bids and their print jobs from their whole supply chain. And then as you go into Canada, they just introduced a cap and trade system for carbon a couple of years ago. That's starting to flow down from the heavy emitters like in the oil and gas industry to more of the up and down the street in the public sector. And then in the US, it's starting to happen here, this state or that state. And so I think, as that continues to go forward, we want to be a leader in that, and we want to help customers along the way, because it's, as we've, I think, uncovered today, it's sort of a whole sustainability is a whole world of acronyms and alphabet soup, and it's a lot of changes and stuff to keep up with and keep on top of it. So we can add value if we're helping our partners understand it, and then extend that through to their customers as well. So that's where I see it going, and we're just hoping to be part of it along the way.
Great. How about you, Rylan? What's your wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I see the sustainability industry really ramping up, kind of how we've seen it the last couple of years. As I mentioned before, sustainability was a nice to have, and now it's starting to become something that's being required, especially by some of these top organizations. So this is something clients are going to be pushing. And as Jordan mentioned, we're a small part of a company's overall sustainability framework. But we are working to guide our partners on, navigating those acronyms, that alphabet soup of the sustainability world, but then also being able to make sure that their customers are having the impact that they want, that they're checking those boxes, and that those regulations that I believe are going to come, that they're going to be able to be in compliance with that over time. So that's where I see the industry as a whole going. Excellent.
Well, thank you everybody for a great conversation. It's one that's going to be, obviously we'll be continuing this for a while, but it's a great place to start, and thank you all for being part of it.